We'll call to order the Regional Transportation Authority of Middle Tennessee, Wednesday, May the 19th, 2021. I guess I'm a little remembrance of the movie of Robin Williams, Good Morning Vietnam. Maybe would be maybe a statement here, but we've all been through a lot, and we're all back together for the first time. And I think that is I know there's been trials for everyone in this room. Appreciate you for staying the course. You didn't sign up for a lot of what we went through. I'm going to ask Mayor Hope just to say a word of thanks for what we've been through, and that we are back together now after quite some time. Mayor Hope.
If everyone stand up and bow your head. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for allowing us to come back together in person. Thank you for all the blessings that you've bestowed on our region, our counties, our cities, this great state. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you lift all of us up and lift those up who have struggled with this pandemic, those who have passed, the loss that we've experienced in our communities. And dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you give us the promise of tomorrow and allow us to make wise decisions, lean on you, dear Lord, to do the things that's right in your sight, so our community can be brought back together and made whole. We ask all these things in the holy and blessed name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mayor Holt, and it is good to be back. So I'll see if we can remember how we do this. Have approval of the minutes in front of you for April 21st, 2021, and I'll entertain a motion to approve those when you're ready.
Motion for adoption.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
That was a late aye. We do have public comment period. Do not have to read, I don't think. We're doing this meeting live, and those that want to join via technology could do that, so we're good to go on that. Anybody that was, anybody asked us, Ms. Howe, for public comment on the web?
No, sir.
Okay. Anyone here wishing to speak before this board today? Seeing none, we'll close public comment period, and we'll move on to the financial report. I'll turn it over to Mayor Anthony Hope.
Thank you, Mayor. First, we have our monthly financial report compared to budget. You have that in your packet. That is a discussion item. Ed, would you like to go over any highlights with that?
No, sir, unless there are questions.
All right. Any questions? If not, let's move on to our next item, which is the operating budget forecast discussion for year 22 through year ending 25. And that is also a discussion item. The Finance Committee met last week. Myself, Mayor Ketron, Mayor Vogel, and Ed Cole were in attendance. And I want to encourage the members to speak out if I leave anything off my report. The committee's main item for discussion was on pages 8 through 12 of your packet. We discussed the budget for next year, which should not be a problem. There are no increases for partners included in the proposed budget. The staff is recommending moving back to full service in October. We continue to use CARES Act funding to make up for lost revenues, to cover expenses normally covered with fair revenues, and keep our partners' contributions stable. Biggest part of the discussion was what our direction and service plan might look like for how the RTA moves forward over the next 3 to 4 years. Looking beyond next year, staff presented us with an optimistic and a pessimistic scenario of coming out of the pandemic. The optimistic ridership returning to more normal levels over the next 2 to 3 years, and CMAQ monies continuing to be available. The pessimistic scenario was ridership on a much lower recovery and CMAQ funding going away. CMAQ funding was probably the most important topic discussed. We know that this funding is the lifeblood of our regional bus service. Without continuation of this funding, there would be a strong likelihood that regional partners could not sustain the service as we see it today. Right now, the current round of CMAQ funding will last through year ending 2023, and that's great. But the committee focused on what the likelihood was that TDOT may not award new CMAQ funding. There is a likely impression that the RTA is loaded with a bunch of federal CARES and rescue dollars and does not need CMAQ funding, which is not true. The special federal funding is one-time funding and will run out. The RTA will always need to try to gather the CMAQ funding to continue our regional bus service. If we skip a new round of funding, there's a great likelihood it'd be much harder to get it back in the future. And TDOT is putting out a call for new CMAQ projects, which is due next month. The committee really thinks it's important for us to apply for this new CMAQ funding. We need to keep that CMAQ pipeline open with TDOT because it's imperative that we think long-term. It's important we get in front of the commissioner and TDOT, Commissioner Bright, as soon as possible to discuss the direction of the RTA. Express RTA needs for continuing support through CMAQ funding and other initiatives in the TDOT's plan would include partnerships with public transit being woven into future plans for Middle Tennessee. All regional partner mayors can be an advocate for TDOT, to TDOT, on how the legislator and the governor goes through the next budget cycle. We need to plan an outline of where we're going, and the Finance Committee has asked staff to prepare an outline, an eventual plan as soon as possible to have talking points. And we'd like to meet with TDOT and Commissioner Bright and hopefully have a productive meeting of getting those points across and laying out a plan for the future. One of the last topics we touched on is I wrap up my, well, that may be the next slide. So basically, I think really what we talked about, and anybody correct me that's on the committee that was, if I get off base, that we need to lay out a real vision for TDOT on how these monies can be used for capital improvements to make sure that they don't look at us as saying, well, you're getting this one-time money, you're happy right now, go away, and we'll deal with CMAQ funding later on. If we can't continue a commitment of CMAQ funding, it's going to be a very hard lift in the future to get them to recognize we need that money to continue to operate. So hopefully that is my report on that. If there's any questions, comments, or suggestions.
I'll make one comment. Mr. Chairman, I think we focused on the timing being so close. We need to do that before the commissioner starts working on the governor's budget, which is towards the end of October. So we need to be in front of them, because once they start down that road of preparing this budget for next year, and somebody makes a comment that they don't need that CMAQ money, then it's going to be hard to retrieve that. So we need to make that message clear up front before he gets into that mode of sitting that.
And I do think too, we need some, yeah, we need some direction on how you want us to move forward. We don't all need to show up at the commissioner's office, but we need to be strategic on who shows up. And probably it would be important for definitely our chairman to come and the Finance and Audit Committee, it's most of the members. So, you know, really we need, I don't know, we need a motion. We need some affirmation from this executive body that that's the direction you want to take, because Mayor, you're right. Mayor Ketchum's right. We've got a short window. We need to push this out and get their input so we can work this through the system and make sure that we're successful.
Mayor, Christine?
Yeah, I would just echo the conversation we had with the finance committee chair, the report right on target. I think our concern is that in this short time frame, that we put together a plan that shows TDOT and anybody else that we are using these short-term federal resources built into a base of a plan that's dependent on them, on CMAQ, and on our ongoing funding, as opposed to saying, well, we still need CMAQ, despite of all this other money we have. It'd still be nice to have the CMAQ money. That's the biggest mistake we can make. I think if we come in that way, rather than come in with this plan and show how CMAQ is woven into the critical nature of the resource.
And so I would take that as a motion in a second, that we get a plan together, if that's good, and be ready to submit that prior to August. I don't know if you want to bring it back next month to the board to present what you're going to present, or no, you're just ready to go and you'll be able to do that. But any other discussions or amendment to that motion?
I just want to follow up and say I appreciate our staff. I think we're going to be successful if we can strike a nerve with TDOT to let them know that we're willing to work with them to use some of this money to leverage some of the projects that's already out there. Their capital projects, they tend to really embrace that and lets them know that we're a partner rather than we're just coming out with our hand out, always asking for something.
Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you for that.
All right, we're going to move on to our next item, and that is the 2022 capital update. And I think Felix is going to give us that update.
Thank you, Mayor Holt. Good morning. It's good to see all of you in person again. Yeah, thank you. I just want to give a very brief update on where we are on the capital plan. We're going to be bringing a new capital plan next month in June in conjunction with the operating budget as well. Just as a refresher, the capital plan is the RTA capital plan is a multi-year plan. It's a 5-year plan, and basically it prioritizes the capital projects. We look at funding for those and set timelines for how those projects are going to take place. It's a 5-year plan. We put a special weight on the first 2 years of the plan, knowing where the revenues are, and the outer years of the plan are more for planning purposes, as those revenues may change over time. But basically, we're trying to establish a balance between what the regulatory needs are, maintaining our system in a state of good repair, and any expansion projects related to the in-motion plan recommendations. And the overall goal is to ensure that we are meeting the capital needs and keeping the system efficient as we move forward. Next slide, please. I don't plan to dwell a lot on this slide, but I just want to give you a good sense of, what are the main sources of the funding for the plan. We have, of course, the federal funding, the majority or the bulk of it from the Federal Transit Administration. We have urbanized area formula money that comes to the urbanized area based on a combination of factors, including revenue miles, passenger miles, and as well as population and population density. We have 5337 also from the FTA, and that exclusively comes here because of the WIGO Star. That's the one that meets the requirements for that funding, the fixed guideway. There's also some other highly competitive funding sources at the federal level, but on the federal highway side, like CMAQ, which you are familiar with because we use it for operations, but it also qualifies for capital projects as long as it improves air quality and reduces congestion. And also the STBG Surface Transportation Block Grant, and we go through that through the GNRC MPO process related to the long range plan. All of this funding is 80% federal share. There's also some state funding, including the Improve Act that's set aside for transit from the Improve Act. We've used that in the past for buses for the RTA and locomotive overhaul. We used some of that funding in the past for that. And then the state typically matches any capital awards or federal money with 10% of the state. And then there's the local 100% local money from the locals and required matches for those grants. There's other funding opportunities. Mostly those are competitive opportunities that we see for that. Next slide, please. So we have, 5 main groupings for how we put those projects in the plan. So those main buckets you can see here. The safety regulatory are basically those that are required or mandated by law or a specific regulation. It's you see here it's about 1%. A lot of the safety things are mostly relating on the operating side. Although you can also say that by maintaining the system in a state of good repair, you're also addressing safety. There's the capital cost of contracting, and because we have limited funding for operations, RTA transfers 5307 capital money to for the cost of covering the contracting services for rails for rail. There's the state of good repair, as the name suggests, making sure that we maintain the system in optimal place. So we address safety, we make it more efficient and more reliable for the passengers. Business improvements, those are any projects that help us to make sure that we are operating a good service to provide to the customers and streamline business operations. And then those related to the motion service improvements or expansion as identified in the motion plan. And some of those, as you may be aware, relate to the WIGO Star enhancement program. We had some of those outlined in the HDR planning report that was we brought to you last year, I believe. Yeah, it's been a while. And include upgrading some of the track for additional trips without PTC, of course, downtown storage and other more detailed engineering for some of those projects as well. Next slide, please. So as we start looking ahead for some key areas as we develop the next plan, these are some of the projects that we are beginning to focus on. WIGO Rail Star infrastructure, we have to keep maintaining that in a state of good repair. We have to do some additional maintenance at the stations. We just completed Mount Juliet station, but there's other stations that require additional maintenance, and those are being outlined in the plan. We need an additional cab control car. We currently have 2, and there's an additional that will be needed to meet the fleet needs. And then related to the in-motion service improvements and expansion, as I mentioned, some of the potential enhancements that we've identified. We're moving forward with a study to help us identify what the next steps are with the WIGO Star and making sure that we are looking at what the needs are and how the local stakeholders are envisioning that taking shape. And also the lack of well-designed park and rides and it's a hindrance for the service being better for our regional buses. So we know you are aware of some of those needs. So we've identified some additional funds to be able to pursue land acquisition, development of those park and rides. So next slide, I think, is discussion. So we would like to have you look at these, and I know there was some of that came during your previous item, but I'll just highlight a few things to consider as we move forward. We've come to a point where we have addressed the state of good repair, and we've had made some good progress as far as where we are with track improvements, upgrades to the stations. We've replaced the passenger cars. We've done the locomotive overhauls. We're buying new buses. We bought some. So we're at a good point right now. So I think we need to start thinking about how do we move with some of these capital projects. Of course, this is going to be very tied to the discussion about the funding for the operations. And I think as far as some of the things that are happening, there are some projects that we're working with TDOT. The widening of the State Route 386 is one. That we've talked to them about some of our needs, especially about transit priority and park and rides. The Metro Nashville is working on a downtown Nashville neighborhood traffic study that is going to have a high impact on how our regional buses and regional service interacts in downtown Nashville. So that's something that we're moving in that direction, working also with TDOT on the I-24 Smart Corridor. So there's a couple of opportunities there. We're moving with the Wiggle Star study, as I mentioned. So as part of those discussions that the board members will have with Commissioner Briley, I think it's important to start looking at what the role is of RTA is going to be also not only on the operating side, but also the projects as far as the infrastructure, the regional infrastructure moving forward. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if you have any discussion to have, we'll be happy to chime in as well. Steve, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
You covered it well. Any questions or comments? Thank you. Well, Chairman, next to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Felix, and thank you, Mayor Holt. Move forward now to the operations report from Jared Kirkland.
I'd like to take just a moment as the operations chair to thank Felix for the presentation that he just did, and to thank everyone that is in this room and that is watching for the future of transportation in Middle Tennessee. It is a very complex issue, which you have heard, from train cars, train engines, to tracks, to buses, to vans. So working together, there's no doubt that we will make progress on this, and I know everyone has missed the report that I give each month, because well, let's face it, since the last March of a year ago, we've all been, it's not transportation, it's been a roller coaster ride. We've gone up and down and all around, and March 2021 report, it's the last month that we would see a huge drop in our ridership over the year. As the pandemic was in full swing in April and March of 2020, we had the tornado that disrupted our rail service for over a week prior to the beginning of the epidemic. Ridership has begun to climb, but it's at a slow rate, and most businesses still have remote work arrangements for their employees. Service changes approved by the board several months ago took effect in April, and we will be monitoring the impacts over the coming months. We're planning to restore full service to pre-pandemic levels. Hopefully will begin in October. With respect to service performance, we did not experience any accidents on either bus or rail in March, and on-time performance continued to perform well through, go down slightly for bus and traffic as traffic picks up again. For the star, you will see that the trip completion percentage was low for the month. This was a result of the flooding. So we not only have pandemic, tornadoes, we did have flooding. Just thoughts of it is overcoming. But as a result of that flooding in the region that we saw in March, we had several washouts along the tracks, forcing us to suspend service for several days. We did provide substitute bus service during this disruption, and finally I'll close on a positive note and say that we did not receive any customer complaints on bus or rail during March, and that's absolutely amazing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Kirkland, for your report. We'll move on now to the CEO's report, Mr. Steve Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope the mic's picking me up. First of all, I just wanted as a reminder that despite the fact that CDC has relaxed the masking requirements overall, the Transportation Security Administration still has masking on public transportation as a requirement through at least September. So we are still asking that our customers, both in our facilities and on our vehicles, wear a facial covering. You heard under Mayor Holt's report on finances, the issue of the federal relief funding under COVID in 3 rounds of separate legislation. regional transit operators received funding in 2 of those pieces of legislation. The most recent being the Rescue Plan Act. And when we went through the sub-area allocation process, RTA shares $1 million of that. So we are in the process of getting those funds under contract and programmed. Also wanted to report last time we met, we were kind of in the midst of the Metro budget process. We still are kind of in the midst, although we certainly have a lot more certainty than we did a month ago. You'll recall with all the other fiscal challenges that Metro faced last year, they reduced our operating funding to the RTA by $1 million. So more than half, frankly, because of the availability of the substitute federal funding. Mayor Cooper's budget proposal that's currently in front of the Metro Council would restore that funding to the prior levels. So that would put us back on stable ground. Our budget hearing before Metro Council's Budget and Finance Committee is next Tuesday. Now that we're back in person, I was telling Michelle I had to watch a YouTube video to remember how to tie a tie, and it took 4 tries. But I also get to introduce a couple of our new staff additions in person. First, Andy, if you'd raise your hand. Andy Burke is our relatively new, not so new anymore, Chief Operating Officer. He took Bill Miller's place as Bill finally retired for, I think, the 3rd time. This time, I think he means that, although he is still supporting us in collective bargaining on the MTA side. And also, Renuka, if you'd raise your hand, Renuka Christoph is our even newer Director of Marketing, Sales, and Communications. So she comes to us from the Music City Center, which also certainly had some experience with the downturns of the pandemic. And I told her job one, once she learns where all the offices are, when everybody comes back, is figure out how to convince people to come back. So that's an active campaign that we're going to be working on. We'll be partnering, you heard Felix allude to it in his report on the capital plan, and I see Faye in the back of the room somewhere hiding behind Michael, I think. We are going to be partnering with the City of Nashville, TDOT, and Nashville Downtown Partnership on a downtown neighborhood traffic circulation study. Man, I was downtown over the weekend, and it's like somebody flipped a switch. It's all back, for better and worse, I guess. So trying to sort out all of those uses, trying to figure out, can we identify some transit priority corridors? We need to, with the amount of job growth that we're seeing downtown, we need to figure out, frankly, better ways to connect our regional customers to the other job centers beyond just the state capitol complex, whether that's Nashville Yards, what's happening on the East Bank, Sobro, and what have you. So in my view, that's going to be a critically important project for, frankly, for RTA, MTA, and for the region as a whole. Progress is continuing on our quick ticket, contactless, touchless fare payment system in the interest of resilience and pandemic resistance. Our target on the RTA side with the STAR and regional bus is to have the system fully operational and start marketing it to the public on about July 1st. A couple of the active things we're doing now is we are commissioning and testing our ticket vending machines. We have ticket vending machines at all of our rail stations, as well as some strategic locations in bus and at WeGo Central. We have kind of onboard apps for our train conductors to be able to validate tickets that are in testing. And we are also addressing some connectivity issues with some of our rail station platform validators. So all those activities are kind of in wrap-up form. We've been beta testing it on the MTA side for almost a year now, and I know at least my part of it works. I use both the contactless card and the mobile app. That's been working very well. I just wanted to highlight and touch on and follow up on some of the comments that Chairman Holt and Mayor Ketron and Ed made. First of all, I want to express my appreciation personally to the members of the Finance Committee who participated in that. That was a really good and lively discussion. Frankly, the direction to staff was really clear. Mayor Ketron, really appreciate your comments on timing. Not your first rodeo in that regard. So I thought that those were really valuable. And really, frankly, what it comes down to from my perspective is to be able to go to Commissioner Bright and TDOT and frankly, regional partners like GNRC and say, there's really we can't say there's a crisis immediate need for CMAQ to support our operations, based on what Mayor Holt presented and what Ed's showed is we can make a go of it for several years. The concern being, once that funding drops out, can you ever get it back? So part of the idea is when you listen to Felix's comments about, being able to develop those downtown priority measures, being able to develop solid, good, well-located, purpose-built park and ride lots in our regions, doing more stationary development. I know Mayor Bell, we've talked to him about looking at stationary development around Lebanon Station. We're talking to the city of Nashville about development around Donaldson Station. So some of those key capital upgrades, is there a way for us to essentially try to maybe do substitute funding? Kind of take that, set aside, move it over into some strategic capital projects. And the plan that Mayor Ketron alludes to, that Mayor Holt talked about, is really kind of that discussion point. Here are some key strategic initiatives that will position us, because even coming out of the pandemic, there's been a lot of discussion about, well, gee, what if everybody goes to remote work or flexible work? What if everybody starts working from home 2 days a week? I would expect that'll happen, because certainly we're talking about it in our own workplace, as I suspect you all are in your cities and counties. On the other hand, we've got, I don't know, Faye or Michael, how many thousands of jobs moving into downtown Nashville? One of my MTA board members is in commercial real estate, and frankly, she is not seeing a downturn in the demand for office space. So how that space gets used may very well change, but, and again, being downtown on Saturday, doesn't seem to me that overall demand for what we do is going to decline over time if we can deliver it in the right way. So again, I want to express my appreciation to members of the committee, because I thought it was right on. It was our first in-person meeting. It's good to see everybody after so long. And it was certainly a great way to spend that meeting. Then the last thing I would touch on, Felix mentioned kind of that conceptual study we did on the STAR, part of this whole strategy moving forward. We currently have a request for information out to the consulting community, because we have set aside funding to do kind of that next level. What do we do with the STAR moving forward? And as I view it in its most simple terms, there's really 3 possible directions we can take. And some of this is reflected in the city of Nashville's transportation plan moving forward. And you'll see some of it in the capital plan that we bring forward next month. One is status quo. Once we got our positive train control limited service exception, we were able to take the resources that were previously programmed, move that into state of good repair projects. So our passenger cars, our locomotives should be good to go for another 10 or 15 years. We've gotten our track all welded now. It's in a state of very good repair, so we have to kind of do the routine stuff. We've obviously done the Mount Juliet station upgrades. We'll be doing some nominal upgrades to the other station over the next few years. We've acquired 20 new buses on the RTA commuter bus side, so that's about 2/3 of our fleet. So on the STAR side, do we kind of leave it the way it is? Do we make some of the next level improvements that were outlined in the HDR report that might not require positive train control, but might squeak out an additional trip or two in each direction? Or do we move in the direction of, taking it next level, where we essentially advance positive train control and what have you? So that's going to be work that's going to be very active over the next year, that we'll be working most closely with certainly the STAR Corridor Committee, the Wilson and Davidson County members, but also our Operations Committee and Finance Committee on. And, so I think over the next year, we're going to know a lot more about where this whole thing is headed. So I guess on that overly lengthy note, it's just so much easier to talk to folks in person than over a computer monitor. So very appreciative of what you all have done as both mayors and as RTA board members. So Mr. Chairman, unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Our CEO. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Steve, for that. And I'll have a couple of comments with the chair's report. One, thank you all for the adjustments that you've made and the cooperation that we've had to continue our operation and to keep it going during a tough time. And definitely what has happened in our country definitely has affected us, definitely in transportation, with people working from home and staying home. And so to keep it afloat has been a challenge, and we appreciate all of you for what you've done, and all of you for continuing to be able to meet with us electronically. I will say, as an offspring of this, and I'll give credit to Ed Cole for that. We will have our first senior ride in Wilson County. It's called Wilson Rides on Friday at 9 o'clock. It'll be a ribbon cutting at Dale Will. And invite all of you to come if you can. But, you know, we think that is definitely a progress that happened, and it started right here with Ed Cole talking about how to get seniors around. So I appreciate that. Are there any other business to come before this body today? Seeing none, I need one more motion. Mayor Bill? All right, we are adjourned. Good job.